My name is Hollis Ward. I'm 63 years old, raised in the Missouri Ozarks, and I have cut, split, and stacked my own firewood every year of my adult life. 4 years ago, I tore down a rick that had been sitting against the south wall of my shop for 2 winters. I found 9 nests in it: shredded bark, dry grass, a wad of pink fiberglass they'd pulled out of the shop wall, and in 2 of them a cache of acorns and hickory nuts laid in for the winter. Little gray-brown mice with white bellies and white feet. I was 12 feet from my own back door. And what I want you to understand today is that those 9 nests were not a nuisance. They were not a mess. They were the reason my wife spent that next August on antibiotics. Stay with me. You'll get the actual biology, which is short, and it will change how you look at that pile. The exact height off the ground, the distance from the house, the way to stack a row that dries wood faster and houses nothing, and one safety rule about mouse droppings that I need you to hear before you start moving anything. Go out and roll the bottom log off your stack. Not the top, the bottom, the one that's been on the dirt. Underneath it you'll find the underside gone dark and soft, and sow bugs, and probably a slug track. That's the part everybody notices. Now look into the gaps between the splits, a foot up from the ground. That's where you'll find the nest. Dry, tight, tucked into a triangle of space where 3 pieces of wood cross. The animal you're looking for is the white-footed mouse. Gray-brown on top, clean white belly, white feet, big black eyes, big ears. Not the house mouse, which is uniformly gray and lives in your walls. This one lives outdoors. Leaf litter, brush piles, stone walls, and wood piles. Especially wood piles, because you have built it exactly what it wants. Cover overhead so an owl can't see it. Hundreds of separate hiding places. Dry ground underneath. Nothing that walks in and eats it. And it's warm, because you stacked it against a heated building. You didn't build a wood pile. You built the best mouse habitat on your property, and then you put it next to your house. Here's the biology, and it's 4 sentences. A tick is not born carrying disease. It hatches clean. It has to get the bacterium from an animal it feeds on. The animal it feeds on, as a larva, is almost always a small rodent, and the white-footed mouse is the best supplier of the Lyme disease bacterium in eastern North America. There's a term for this, a reservoir host, the animal a disease lives in between the times it's in you. And there's a term for how good an animal is at the job, reservoir competence. The white-footed mouse has just about the highest reservoir competence there is. The numbers from the research. In areas where Lyme is established, surveys have found anywhere from 30 to 95% of white-footed mice carrying the bacterium. And when a clean larval tick feeds on an infected mouse, roughly 90% of the time, that tick comes away carrying it. In the original laboratory work, Mather and Spielman, published in 1987, the study that formally nailed down this life cycle, the rate of infection in larvae that fed on mice 2 or 3 weeks after those mice were infected, approached 100%. And the mice stayed infectious to ticks for more than 200 days. 200 days! That's a mouse born in spring still loading ticks in the fall. Item 3. The part that should bother you, peak 1. Now the piece that I think about more than any of it. The bacterium does nothing to the mouse. Researchers at the Carey Institute followed a mouse population for 4 years and looked for any effect at all. No effect on survival. Infected mice lived as long as clean ones. Other work found no behavioral change and no meaningful sign of illness. Sit with that. The thing that will put you on 3 weeks of doxycycline, that gives some people joint pain for years. That same organism moves into a mouse, and the mouse carries on, eats acorns, raises a litter, and dies of old age or an owl like any other mouse. That is not an accident. That's what makes it a good reservoir. An animal that got sick and died would be a bad bank. This one is a perfect one, because it never closes. So when you look at that stack of oak against your shop wall, you are not looking at 9 mice. You are looking at 9 deposits, each one open 200 days, each one loading roughly 9 out of every 10 ticks that finds it, 12 feet from where your children take their boots off. Here's the timing, and this is the part almost nobody puts together. The larval ticks feed in late summer, right about now. They feed on the mice, they take on the bacterium, And then they drop off and molt over the winter into nymphs. Those nymphs come out and go hunting the following June and July. And the nymph, the poppy seed one, the one you don't find, is the stage that infects the most people. So run that forward. The pile you stack in September, out of wood you split in July, is housing the mice that are loading the larvae right now. Those larvae become the nymphs that quest next June. On the ground you walk between the house and that pile. You are not looking at this year's problem, you're looking at next June's, and you're building it in the fall with your own hands and a maul. Which means restacking it now is not housekeeping. It's the only point in the calendar where you get ahead of it. If you've torn into an old pile and found nests, tell me in the comments how many and how close it was to the house. I'd like a count from people who've actually looked, because I've never seen anyone put a number on it, and I only have my own. Item 5. The other thing in there, and the rule. Peak 2. Now I have to stop the video and give you a safety rule, because the next thing I'm going to tell you to do is move a woodpile, and moving a woodpile means disturbing mouse droppings and nesting material. Deer mice, a close relative, same white-bellied family, are the main carrier of hantavirus in this country. It's rare. It is also, when it happens, a serious respiratory illness. You do not catch it from a bite, you catch it by breathing dust. Dried urine, droppings, and nest material get stirred into the air, and you inhale it. Which means the ordinary thing a person does, grab a broom and sweep out the mess, or take the shop vac to it, is the one thing that puts it in the air. So here's the rule, and it's straight off state public health guidance. Do not sweep. Do not vacuum. Do not blow it out with a leaf blower. Wet it first. A bleach solution, roughly 1 part bleach to 9 parts water, or about 1.5 cups of bleach per gallon. Soak the droppings in the nest material and let it sit 5 to 10 minutes before you touch anything. Wear rubber gloves. Wear an N95, an actual N95, not a paper dust mask. If it's an enclosed space, a shed, a cabin that sat shut all winter, a garage, open it up and let it air out a good half hour before you go in. Wipe up with paper towel or a wet rag, double bag it, and wash your hands. Outdoors in the open air, on a windy day, moving a pile in the yard, the risk is low. Inside a shed with the door shut and a broom in your hand, it is not. Know which one you're doing. Now the actual method. 4 things, in order of how much they matter. Get it off the ground. Dot. Asterisk, asterisk. 12 inches, minimum. Washington State's Health Department puts that number in writing for exactly this reason. 2 pallets, a couple of pressure-treated 2x4s on cinder blocks, a length of pipe, anything that puts air under the whole stack. That one move does 2 jobs at once, and this is the part I like. The mouse wants the same conditions the rot fungus wants: darkness, moisture, and contact with the ground. Lift the wood 12 inches, and you have taken away the nursery, and you've cut your seasoning time. Because now the pile can breathe from below. Rot and rodents are the same enemy, and 1 pallet fights both. Get it away from the hues. Dot. Asterisk, asterisk. Here the sources genuinely disagree, and I'll tell you so. Some public health guidance says 20 feet. Garfield County, Colorado, writing specifically about hantavirus, says 100. The CDC's tick guidance just says keep it neat and dry and away from the house. My answer? As far as you'll actually walk in February. A pile 100 feet out that you resent every trip is a pile you'll eventually restack by the door. 20 feet, sunny, is a real improvement over against the wall, and you'll keep it. 30 or 40 is better if the ground allows. Never, ever stacked against the siding. That's not just mice, that's carpenter ants and termites getting a covered bridge to your wall. Put it in the sun and the wind. Dot. Asterisk, asterisk. Not under the deck, not on the north side, not in the tree line. Sun and moving air dry the wood and make the pile a worse place to live. Stack it single row, split side down, bark side up. Dot. Asterisk, asterisk. A single row exposed on both faces dries far faster than a big square block, and it gives a mouse many fewer interior triangles to move into. Bark up sheds rain. Leave a couple of inches between rows if you run more than one, and keep the grass and brush cut back around the base, so a mouse has to cross open ground to reach it. While you're moving it, get the other half of the benefit. Seasoning is just water leaving. fresh split wood can be half water by weight. You want it under about 20% before it goes in a stove, and green wood takes 6 months to a year up off the ground in the sun, longer for oak, which is stubborn, and shorter for ash. Wet wood doesn't just burn poorly. The water has to boil off before the wood can burn, which steals heat you paid for, drops your firebox temperature, and puts unburned smoke up a cool flue where it condenses as creosote. Creosote is what chimney fires are made of, so the same 12 inches of air that evicts the mouse also gives you a hotter fire and a cleaner chimney. 1 stack, 3 problems. Tarping the whole pile to the ground. You've made a tent. Water can't get out, mice can't be seen, and the bottom half stays wet all year. Cover the top 18 inches only, sides open. Stacking on the north side of the building because it's out of the way. No sun, no drying, perfect harborage. A big square block 8 feet deep. The middle never dries, and the middle is where they live. Bird feeders and dog food near the pile. You've added a cafeteria to the hotel, leaving the bottom row down for years because it's a pain to get to. That bottom row is the whole problem. Burn it or move it every season. Bare hands into an old pile, gloves, spiders, wasps, and in some countries snakes. And moving firewood a long way from where it was cut. Borers and diseases travel in firewood, and that's how they get into new counties. Burn it near where it grew. Restacking your woodpile will not remove mice from your property. They live in the leaf litter, the stone wall, the brush pile, and the fence row, and they were here before you were. What it does is move the densest concentration of them away from the door you use every day, and take away the single best piece of rodent housing you own. It also does not, by itself, drop your tick count this year. The larvae feeding now are already feeding. This is a next June intervention, same as the wood chip barrier was. And it isn't a substitute for the 2 things that actually protect your body, treated boots and socks, and checking yourself when you come in. The pile is groundwork. Groundwork never replaces the check. One more honest note. If you've got a real infestation in an outbuilding, droppings across a floor, chewed insulation, a smell, that's past a woodpile problem. And cleaning it is the enclosed space job with the respirator and the wet method I described. Don't shortcut that one because you're in a hurry. 1 row, not the whole pile. The row that touches your house, that's the job. Saturday morning, gloves on, and move that row out to at least 20 feet from the wall, into the sunniest spot you've got, up on 2 pallets or a pair of 2x4s laid across blocks, so there's a hand's width of daylight under every stick. Single row, bark side up, grass cut back around it. If you find nests, wet them down with the bleach solution first, and let it sit 5 minutes before you touch them. Don't sweep, don't blow. Half a day. No money at all, unless you have to go find 2 pallets, and any hardware store or feed store will give you those. When you're done, stand at your back door and look at where that wood used to be. That's 20 feet of open, mowed, sunlit ground between your house and the nearest good place for a mouse to live. That's the whole assignment. Next week, the old window leaning against your garage. What it's worth, why the catalog charges $300 for the same thing built worse, and how to be eating spinach out of your own ground in December. Cost is a window somebody's already trying to give away. 9 nests, 12 feet from the door. I'd stacked wood that way for 30 years because that's where my father stacked it. And his reason was that it was close to the stove. And that was a good reason in 1970, when nobody in this country had heard the word Lyme. The wood doesn't care where it sits. It'll dry better out in the sun anyway. Move the row that touches the house. Start there.